Hello and welcome back to Perspectives, bringing you our daily dose of news and views covering the topics we hope are relevant to you. Today, we have coverage outside the Surrey courthouse where the four co-accused behind Hardeep Singh Nijjar's murder face justice. We take a look at the successful Sikh convention here in the UK and the significant decisions made affecting the community and how it intends to interact with British politicians going forward. The statue of Maharajah Ranjit Singh is vandalised in Canada. And in India, a pro-independence campaigner for Ladakh finds himself in jail for highlighting his cause. Yep, it's Modi's Indian style of democracy once again in action. Well, joining me, as always, for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our amazing viewers out there. Thank you for joining us yet once again.
Indeed, and James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And as always, we'll be taking a look at lots of your great comments which have been filling up below our videos, so thank you for all of those. Let's get the show on the road. James, what are you going to start us off with today?
Of course, as we touched on last night, the appearance of the four individuals accused in the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar showed up in court today. Not that they had a choice, considering they're still in custody. Now, today's hearing was essentially going to be a bail hearing and a progression hearing for the Crown and the prosecuting attorney, the defense attorney, to discuss the disclosure documents and to move forward with setting a pretrial date for the trial process. Now, the judge at the provincial level did not have the capacity or the ability to grant bail, so that was totally null and void. They didn't even address that issue today. And then they adjourned the rest of the hearing over until November, I believe the 7th. And essentially at that point, they will look at setting the pretrial dates, and given that there is over 20,000 pages of documentation in the case, plus evidence and other disclosure, they are just, a bit behind the ball in terms of ensuring that everything, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, so to speak, Angus. They, of course, want to make sure that this case is handled at the highest level of accuracy. They don't want any grounds for any type of appeals. They want to ensure that they also obtain all information as it pertains to the potential involvement of the government of India so that they can present a full and inclusive case. Now, what was very interesting today is that the leader of the BC Council of Gurdwaras also spoke out at the event outside the rally outside the courthouse, and actually addressed that he feels, or the community feels, that there's about 6 and possibly up to 12 other people that could be actually charged in the planning and the execution of the execution or assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. So we'll watch that as well as more information comes out. We'll keep an eye on that. So right now, I'm going to bring up a video for you to watch, and that's just a bit of the highlights of what was happening outside of the courtroom. Of course, in Canada, we do not have the ability or authorization to film inside the courthouse, let alone inside the courtrooms. So that is, of course, just as I said, a very brief appearance that they made. It was put over till November, so there wasn't a great deal to see within the courthouse itself. So.
This is James Cousineau reporting for Satellite TV. This morning we're outside of the Surrey courthouse in Surrey, British Columbia, where the 4 assailants who are accused in the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar at the Surrey Gurdwara are facing the judge again this morning. We're not sure what to expect at this point, but it wouldn't be surprising if there was another adjournment given the substantial amount of evidence and documentation that both sides need to review. At this time, as you can see, there is a gathering of support outside the Surrey courthouse, and at this point, the court is not in session as of yet, so people are up here early and showing their support and here to ensure that justice is handled in the most proper and professional manner. Peaceful protest outside the courthouse, of course, to support Mr. Nijjar, his memory and his work with the Khalistan referendum, but also to show support to his family and community as a whole. Once again, you're watching Satellite TV, it's James Cousineau reporting from Surrey, British Columbia, Canada.
Who killed Nijjar? Who killed Nijjar? Who killed Nijjar? Faces of terror. Faces of terror. Khalistan. ਭਾਉ ਨਿਜਰ ਦੀ ਸੋਚ ਤੇ ਪਹਿਰਾ ਦੇਾਂਗੇ ਠੋਕ ਕੇ ਭਾਉ ਨਿਜਰ ਦੀ ਸੋਚ ਤੇ ਪਹਿਰਾ ਦੇਾਂਗੇ ਠੋਕ ਕੇ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ
We're seeing in the Canadian political spectrum, we have proxies that we feel that act for the Indian government. We see them within certain political parties. We see what Mr. Arya Chandra is doing, acting more in line with what Indian policy would be, protecting Indian interests in Canada. And I say that because in the Foreign Interference Commission in Canada that's running right now in Ottawa, and I've been there for the last week and I'll be presenting there tomorrow, that there is, very, very important information around the CEO's role in transnational oppression that's been here. We have politicians in Canada that are actually supporting India. We're trying to suppress information that's coming out in the media and changing that narrative. So while we see the violence that was inflicted on by Ranjit and Nijjar, the violence that was supposed to be inflicted on Mr. Singh, Sikhs for Justice, and that violence that was supposed to be inflicted on many other Sikh leaders across Canada and the United States, that is very much, we feel, still out there. But at the moment right now, we're seeing it kind of manifested in other ways as well, not just in that violence, but also in suppression, also in political interference, which is proven to be commissioned already, in foreign interference within media, and also foreign interference with Sikh organizations. So I think all of that is in front of us, and it's something that we're having to use.
What type of suppression?
Sorry, for
suppression you have for the what do you mean by suppression?
From suppression, I mean as in anytime we raise our voices, we are painted in Indian media, and then sometimes that flows over to the Canadian side as well into discourse around being extremists. We're automatically linked to extremism, violence. Any peaceful protest, any peaceful form of dissent is always shown on the Indian side as a violent extremist movement that's running to Canada, which there's no.
This is a faces of terror, Chandraarya and Narendra Modi. This is a Canada violence. This promoting, this is Chandraarya. This why you are Chandraarya not standing with Canada, standing with India. This is the faces of Narendra Modi and Chandraarya terror face. Who's the terrorist? Indian government. Who killed Nijjar? Indian government. Who's the terrorist? Indian government. Khalistan. Zindabad. Khalistan. Zindabad. Khalistan. Zindabad. Khalistan. Zindabad. Sheed Nijjar di soch te. Pehra deange thok ke. Sheed Nijjar di soch te. Pehra deange thok ke. Sheed Nijjar di soch te. Pehra deange thok ke. Thank you so much. 18 October. Indian consulate, Vancouver and Toronto, same. Indian flag is burned and protest. Every media, please request you invite and come with us. 18 October 12 to 2. Thank you so much.
ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਕਿਰਦਾਰ ਕੈਰੈਕਟਰਾਈਜ਼ ਕਰ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਉਹ ਬੰਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਠੀਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੇ so India at a global level that is their reputation is not one that is well respected. The reputation is one of a bully, of one that comes into other countries to assassinate individuals ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਤੋਂ ਹੁਣ ਜੇ ਮੁਕਰ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਆਪ ਦਾ ਝੂਠ ਹੀ ਵਧਾ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਸੱਚ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਸਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਰੈਪੂਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਫਿਕਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਉਹ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਮੋਹਰੇ ਪਰਦਾਫਾਸ਼ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਟੇਟ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਨਸਲਵਾਦੀ ਜਨੋਸਾਈਡ ਸਟੇਟ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਕਈ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਚਾਲਾਂ ਰੱਖੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ 40 ਸਾਲ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਤੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਜਾਂ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਹਿਣ ਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਫੋਰਨ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟਸ ਕਹਿਣ ਆ ਗਈਆਂ ਹੈ ਫਿਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਰਤੂਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਹੋ ਰਹੀਆਂ
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਮਚ
Okay, so as you can see, there was a lot going on outside the courthouse. A lot of supporters there to not only support Mr. Nijjar's family and community, but also to really use it as an opportunity to raise awareness on the human rights atrocities and the extrajudicial killings that are taking place with the potential involvement of the government of India and the agents of the Raw Agency and other agents working on their behalf. With that said, of course, we know already that the, excuse me, sorry about that. We know that the charges that they are facing at this point for the 4 that are in custody are 1, murder, which is first-degree murder and carries a harsh mandatory sentence. And unlike the US, it's not necessarily that they will spend the rest of their natural-born lives in prison if convicted and sentenced on that. But they will be looking at 18 to 25 years before they're even eligible for any type of parole or release. So it definitely is something that is of great punishment when it comes to this case. It could be even harsher for the fact that there is also the second count of conspiracy to commit murder. Now, there are other ways that the Crown could have gone on this, and that is to look at it as a terrorism-related case or a conspiracy of a organized crime group. So different options there, but I think that the best route by the Crown prosecution is to proceed with first-degree murder charges and keep it to the simpler points in law to ensure that they don't convolute the case by all of these extra contributing factors when the same results will be brought out at the end of the day. Excuse me. Now, as you can see in the excuse me, the image on the screen here, you can see that there are not only pictures of 3 of the individuals, but underneath you can see that they are accusing Prime Minister Modi as well as others as being terrorists, Hindu terrorists. And interestingly enough, this is a newer sign that you see down on the right side, or to the left, but on the right of the Canada sign. And that essentially is a merging of the image when it comes to Prime Minister Modi, as well as one of our politicians here in Canada who is very supportive of the India government and anything to do with the Hindu movement there against the Sikhs. So that's why he is also pictured in that. So when we look at the documents once again, as I said, there's over 20,000 or more pages of documentation. Now, this would be inclusive of not only the RCMP investigation of the actual murder of Mr. Nijjar, but it would also include documentation from the Edmonton Police Service, which is separate from the RCMP, the IHIT team, which is the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team, and they are consisting of several different police agencies. Then there is also anything that came in from THESIS, which is our National Intelligence Service. And because of the transnational repression involvement with the government of India, this takes on a whole different area of prosecutorial process that we don't normally see in Canada. So once again, the Crown prosecution has their job cut out for them, and it wouldn't surprise me to see this case delayed a bit longer to ensure that when the pretrial motions do begin and the reading of the facts into the court record, it's going to be a lot, and it's going to be a long process. And I think that that's one thing that people outside the courthouse are aware of, but also that they are growing frustrated with. They know that it's going to be a long process, but at the same time, when there's such emotion coming into this type of case, of course, we know that it's going to be a frustrating process because they get all of the anxiety and the emotion that comes with appearing in court and seeing those individuals, whether it's through video screen or in person. It is a very emotional ride for the victims' families. And I can tell you a couple of years ago, that I had an uncle that I had stopped and surprised on a visit through Ontario. And I hadn't seen him in about a decade. We talked on the phone that, but a week later after that, I received a call. He was actually murdered in a home invasion, and the person actually ate a part of his face and bit off, it was horrific. So I understand how frustrating it can be for the community to have to wait and go through this delay after delay after delay. But again, at the end of the day, the Crown prosecution in that case did a great job at prosecuting the individual responsible. And I have no doubt that that's also going to be the case here with Mr. Nijjar, that it's going to be a very complicated case. But I do have faith that the Crown will make their case in front of a judge. And I also have faith in the RCMP, IHIT, the Edmonton Police Service, and those investigating to make sure that they wrap up the case for the Crown. And of course, with that said, it's not wrapped up yet. There are still many ways in which this case is being investigated. So just because charges are laid, it doesn't mean the investigation stops. So there may be more information that gets added to the process as it goes along. In terms of the 4 individuals charged so far are Amandeep Singh, Kiran Brar, Kamalpreet Singh, and Karanpreet Singh. Now, 3 of the individuals were arrested in Edmonton and brought to Vancouver, or the Surrey, British Columbia, which is a part of Metro Vancouver, for the court process, and they are being held in custody. It's very unlikely at this point that any of them, being Indian nationals here, not being citizens, it's very unlikely that they would be granted bail regardless, especially with the potential involvement of agents acting on behalf of the government of India. Makes them quite the flight risk, of course. Now, with that said, for the way that the court process will move forward is in phases, and the next phase, as I said, will be the pretrial and the entering into fact of the case within the courts. Until then, of course, they will remain in custody, and they are in the Lower Mainland. They get transferred to the court for the procedures or appear via video court. But they're also looking at potential ties between this and, of course, the attempted assassination or the murder for hire plot against Gurpant Singh Panun, who is the head of Sikhs for Justice in New York, but he is also a dual citizen, so he's a citizen of Canada as well. So with the comments today by the individuals, as you've seen in the video, the leader of the BC Association of Gurdwaras, I addressed that issue with him and asked him if he feels that the process is moving along in a proper fashion and how there may be links between the 2 cases. He really didn't go into a lot of specifics, but again brought back that he feels that there are a lot more lower level people as well as middle level people that are still within Canada or the US that have a hand in both of these cases. So we may see some crossover in these 2. With that said, of course, I also brought up the recent meetings with the National Security Council in the United States and the Sikh groups and leaders there. He did state that any progress and any discussions were a very positive step for the Sikh community and to protect those within the Khalistan movement. Now, he also stated that it may have been a way to quell the protests and the rallies outside of the facilities in which Prime Minister Modi was visiting. But at the same time, the end game was that, or the end result was that they did have discussions with the National Security Council. They are taking the transnational repression seriously. They are taking the foreign interference by India very seriously. And they have put very clearly that they will not tolerate any U.S. citizen being assassinated or threatened or anything on U.S. soil. But they also went a step further, Angus, in that they are actually reaching out to local police agencies to offer more training on how to deal with transnational repression and international interference when it comes to elections or just in different community organizations. So again, that was Maninder Singh with the BC Coalition or the BC Association of Gurars. We also see in that video the Sikhs for Justice. They were the ones leading the rally there, as they do every the 18th of every month, down at the India consulate in Vancouver, which we've reported on as well. And Majinder Singh was the individual that you'll see doing the chant and leading the prayers for the group there in front of the courthouse. With that, Angus, I think that there is a lot still that's going to come out of this case and a lot that people are going to be shocked on. But I think the biggest part today was that there was a very large media presence at the courthouse. And I think that with the very well-spoken and articulate words that were spoken there by Maninder, I think that it will raise a lot of eyebrows in the English-speaking Canadian society. He very well addressed about what is the transnational repression as well as the foreign interference. He dealt with the political politics as well as the federal level, as we're coming up to elections shortly in the province of British Columbia. And he did also make note that there are some individuals at the provincial and federal level that the Sikh coalition has some concerns about when it comes to their participation or their involvement and warmth cozying up to India. So we'll watch that as well as it happens. So it's a lot to digest there, Angus, a lot going on, and of course a lot of emotion at the courthouse, but the process is doing its job and it is moving forward.
Indeed, James. I think this case is serving a very useful and important focal point, bringing attention to so many of these issues surrounding the whole Sikh community, not just even in Canada, is actually affecting the international Sikh community as well. The case itself, I think what is coming out is very interesting, even just the very limited snippets of information that do happen to just sort of leak out around the sides. Of course, we've talked about delays in this case, and of course there's an immediate contrast against Indian so-called justice, where delay has become almost part and parcel of any case, particularly when it comes to Khalistan or any Khalistan activism. But of course, the contrast here is in Canada, any delays to any case is a legitimate delay, and it is always mutually agreed by both defence and the prosecution as well. So even the Defence Counsel have the right to refuse any delay, which obviously contrasts immediately with India, where, again, the case of Jaggi is a prime example of that, where his case, we're up to the 136th or something trial hearing, which keeps getting delayed and delayed and delayed, against the wishes, of course, of the Defence Counsel. So there's an immediate comparison. The other, I think, the interesting snippet that did come out of here, James, is this reference to potentially 6 to even 12 other people being wrapped up in this investigation as well. And that is a huge implication, because, of course, we have always assumed it is part and parcel of some complex conspiracy emanating originally from the Indian government via the intelligence services and then ultimately via their proxies, the organised crime domestically in Canada. So, of course, 6 to 12 other people involved in this does therefore support this idea that it is a very, very complex operation that went on, that a lot of people are involved. This wasn't just a one-off killing. It just wasn't a one-off criminal act. It was clearly well planned, it was clearly well executed, and it clearly has implications much wider than just a small, simple murder. So I think that in itself speaks volumes about certainly how large this operation was and its likely implications with its links to India. But of course, it also implies why there are so many delays as such, because clearly the intelligence services, the RCMP, are digging up a lot of information, and it has very clear links to the Gurpatwant Singh Panoon case in the US, and of course to all sorts of other potential or murders that have happened with potential links back to India. So I think there is an awful lot going on beneath the surface that we don't know about, James, but of course by implication it is clearly there. I did notice when I saw this report, James, yes, you referred to it, was this that the posters that had this merged face between Narendra Modi and, of course, a domestic Canadian MP, Chandra Araya. And I actually had to look him up because, of course, I'm not no expert on Canadian politics. And I did a quick look at this guy, and yeah, he's Indian born. He is now a member of the Canadian Parliament. He's a Liberal, but of course, he is very clearly pro-India, as you rightly said, James. And this again is another indication of just how wide those RSS tentacles are. They now have a man, they have a place person in the Canadian Parliament who's effectively representing Indian interests. It's very concerning. And I think that in itself is, it does raise eyebrows, and no wonder then that the Sikh community are themselves taking it upon themselves to raise this and tell the wider world, do you realise there is a pro-RSS stooge sitting in our parliament in Canada? So I think that is actually an area of concern I certainly wasn't aware about. And then the actual protest itself, and again, I salute the guys who turned up once again for this protest. It makes very good publicity. As a simple PR exercise, it's so valuable because, of course, there were mainstream cameras there were mainstream journalists, and they are saying, why are you here? What is this all about? What is this Khalistan that you talk about? And having these professionally printed posters, the wonderful colourful flags everywhere, it presents a very professional, very high profile campaign. And that sends out this message. And we often talk about getting this message out. I think I have to take my hat off to the guys who turned up. They're well done, well organised, very professionally presented, proper presentations to the cameras, very erudite, very well spoken. Representatives. It sends out a very good message, a very professional message to the mainstream media. And of course, if it's well packaged up like that, it's very easy for the mainstream media themselves to package up and present it in their news reports in the evenings, which goes out to, of course, everybody's households. So I'm I would say, very pleased with what we've seen there, James. I think, firstly, the case is proceeding. Secondly, it is highlighting what's going on behind the scenes with India. Clearly, there is a very complex operation. Thirdly, a very high-profile campaign highlighting Indian transnational repression. And finally, James, I think fantastic to see a very professional turnout from Sikhs for Justice, all their supporters. Yeah. And I think that in itself is getting the whole story into the mainstream.
Absolutely, Angus, and something that you touched on was the timeline of which both the Crown prosecutor and the defense counsel agree with any delays. And there are times where that doesn't happen, where they are delayed or they get to argue whether or not there's going to be a delay. But that's an important point that I just want to touch on, simply that in Canada, there is actually a time limit on trials. So it has to happen within a reasonable amount of time, or the accused can actually have the case dismissed. So that's why it is such an essential part of our justice system to make sure that the wheels of justice keep turning. And then also just the other point is that you'll notice, or I'm sure people notice, that in the video, you see where they're chanting and praying, but it's very, very quiet. And the reason why is because the courthouse is actually quite large. There's dozens of courtrooms in there. So even though there was that many people and that much of a setup outside the courthouse, it was still very respectful of the legal process in that they did not disturb any of the cases, including this one, but any of the many cases that are going on within the courthouse at any given time. So that's why they were very muted in their chanting and their prayers, just so you're aware that, yeah, it is a very busy courthouse.
And indeed, I'm delighted to see that my shares in Indian flag manufacturers must be going up, because I see yet more Indian flags being burnt once again. So, great stuff. All right.
They are, but I tell you, the flags are more flame retardant than they used to be, so they have a tougher time trying to burn them.
I think they've realised, they've cottoned on to the fact that there being so many Indian flags being burnt around the world that they're having to make them a little bit more burn resistant. Right, great stuff. Let's move on to my first story now. And here in the UK, we've a couple of weeks ago we had a very, very significant convention. It was a bit of a get together of the Sikh community in the Midlands, a very large section of the British diaspora based in the Midlands, and the the Sikh Federation held a very high level convention to discuss obviously a lot of the very ongoing issues, but also to just take a look at the general structure of the Sikh organisations domestically here in the UK and how they can restructure to try and coordinate better and try and unite all these disparate factions into a bit more of a coordinated effort, and also to bring it a bit more along the lines of more of an international coordinated structure that will allow campaigning and activism to be a lot more effective and have a bigger impact. So I'll come on to that in a moment, what actually was discussed there and what was concluded, and I'll also highlight the fact that on Thursday this week I will be having a discussion with one of our regular guests, Dabinderjit Singh. He's a principal advisor to the Sikh Federation, and on Thursday we'll be going through a lot of those conclusions and a lot of the issues that were discussed on that. So do keep an eye on that. That'll be out later this week, particularly if you're a British Sikh and you'd like to know, if you weren't able to attend, you'd like to know what was discussed and what was concluded. But in the meantime, in Derby, that's one of our councils slap bang in the middle of the United Kingdom. And again, a council that does have a large Sikh diaspora membership. Derby Council was lobbied very successfully by the community to pass a motion relating to the 1984 genocides. And it turned out on the 19th of September, so we can get back just under a couple of weeks, the Derby City Council, they held a meeting, and the Liberal Democrat councillor Ajit Singh Atwal, backed by Lib Dem councillor Emily Lonsdale, put down a motion focused on these events of November 1984. Of course, this refers specifically to the genocide after the assassination of Indira Gandhi. And they put forward a motion that was unanimously approved, I'm delighted to report. And essentially, I won't get into a lot of detail because it was quite a long, detailed motion, but essentially it commemorated all those who lost their lives during those dreadful few days across Delhi and other areas where Sikh families were murdered in cold blood, tortured, set alight, etc., etc. It was a dreadful, dreadful situation. And the council formally commemorated all those who lost their lives. They also recognised the attack in the Punjab in 1984, of course, referring to Harmandir Sahib and Operation Blue Star. It acknowledged that specific attack on the Darbar Sahib complex alongside 40 other Gurdwaras and its impact on the Punjabi community at that time. The council, this is where it gets important, the council calls upon the leader of the council to write to the Deputy Prime Minister, that's the Labour Deputy Prime Minister of the British government, to request a timeline on when the promised inquiry into the role Britain played in the attacks will take place. Now this is important because the Labour government here in the UK made a promise, a pledge during election time to launch an inquiry. If they took power, they will launch an official inquiry into the British government involvement in 1984 behind Operation Blue Star. Now, we do know that there was collaboration and collusion between the British military, and reports are it was the SAS that were consulted, Margaret Thatcher, the British Prime Minister at the time, and their appropriate counterparts in India. Consultation was sought by India on how they should launch that attack upon Bhindranwale and his supporters in the Golden Temple complex. And but we don't really know what was said. We don't know what the British involvement was and how much the British contributed to that. But the Labour government promised prior to their election that they would launch an inquiry. Now, no news as yet. There's been a deafening silence. But here we have a local council, and the council leader is now obliged by his community to pressure his counterparts in the British government to say, when are you launching this campaign? Please give us an official timeline about this investigation. So that is a huge, huge breakthrough. Great news. Now, it was reported that the word genocide was actually not within this motion that was passed. We don't know why. I think the campaigners said they were a bit disappointed that the actual word genocide and all its connotations was not passed in that very motion. But on the other hand, to balance that out, they said they're not too worried because actually the words of the motion that was passed were very comprehensive. It effectively did cover everything that needed to be covered. I think the word genocide was left out. Maybe it was just a little bit too provocative. It's a shame, but I think locally it does appear that they are satisfied with the motion that was passed because it did include a lot of very powerful language, etc., etc. So well done to those in the Derby community. That's a very great step forward, a very powerful achievement that's been passed there. So well done to you guys up there. Now, the actual convention itself, I'll quickly whip through what was reported in this. The high-level reports were, the high-level conclusions were that there will be a major reorganisation of the Sikh Federation UK, or Sikh, we call them Sikhs here in the UK, with new and younger leadership working under a Panj Pardana collective leadership system. That goes back to very much more traditional Sikhi leadership styles. To work with the UK government and to take forward the struggle for Sikh independence on the international stage. So again, reorganising the leadership to align more internationally and to unite things to help take forward the whole self-determination issue. A coordinated international campaign to have India officially declared a rogue state following India being exposed in the last 12 months on the international stage for transnational repression, state-sponsored terrorism and political interference abroad. A global structure of the Federation to be unveiled in the coming weeks based on the UK model, beginning, James, with the declaration of the Sikh Federation in Canada. So in Canada, they're going to have the same structure set up to help coordinate internationally between the two diasporas. And that will happen towards the end of September or early October, so pretty much now. Greater international coordination and accountability mechanisms at a national and international level to allow a global team to negotiate with governments, including superpowers, on behalf of a sovereign Sikh state. So again, this is all about coordinating the various diaspora organisations to ensure that they all start working together. Their structures, their infrastructures are aligned and reflected across each nation's diaspora so that they can work a little bit better, more coordinated, to help align and help coordinate the overall approach to international governments to help push the pro-Khalistan message. Now, the actual convention, a few little details about the convention itself. The convention took place at the Guru Nanak Gurdwara in Wolverhampton, that's in the Midlands here in the UK, and it was actually to mark the 40th anniversary of the Sikh Federation here in the UK. The origins of the Federation can be traced directly back to June 1984 and of course what happened then. And the convention attracted over 10,000 Sikhs over 3 days, so well done to those who managed to make it there. It was broadcast live on several channels across the globe in over 100 countries, and one of the major announcements on the 40th anniversary was this reorganisation. And of course a switch to a Panj Pardana system in the hands of those born and brought up in the West. And it was a momentous point in modern day Sikh history. It also signalled to Sikhs across the globe the future direction of travel for the model of Sikh leadership that should be encouraged. And they also said here domestically, after 14 years of a Conservative government, the political focus in the UK will be on specific promises made by the Labour leadership prior to the election. Of course, I referred there to that public inquiry on the UK involvement in the Sikh genocide of 1984, the release and return to the UK of Jagtar Singh Johal. And I interviewed his brother Gurpreet yesterday, or a couple of days ago actually. That will be uploaded today, so keep an eye out for my discussion with Gurpreet. Lots of interesting detail about what's going on there. Lots of interesting insight into how the British government, particularly the Conservative government, failed just spectacularly on making any progress towards Jaggy's release. And I'll quote what Gurpreet said. He met with the then Foreign Secretary of the Conservative government, James Cleverly, and he said he had a meeting with James Cleverly where they talked about Jaggy, and he came out of that meeting and he said he wanted to throw himself off London Bridge. That's how frustrated and depressed that Gurpreet felt after his meeting with the British Foreign Secretary. This is after several years of Jaggy's detention. This is after proof had come out, had been revealed to the British government about Jaggi's torture, who are therefore morally and legally obliged to take action. Yet Gurpreet felt the need almost to throw himself off the London Bridge because he just felt he was making no progress with the Conservative government. So again, there's going to be a lot of pressure now coming from this new structure of the Sikh Federation against the new Labour government. To move things forward on particularly these issues and specifically Jaggi, and of course the recognition of anti-Sikh hate. It is hoped that the 12 Labour Sikh MPs, of course, have now a great representation in the British Parliament. We hope that they can also get a Labour government to deliver a statutory code of practice on Sikh articles of faith and formally recognise the 1984 genocide. And the report goes on, and I won't go into too much detail again, because we're up against time. But many observers see the Federation's international structure as the first stage of an international set-up to facilitate negotiations on the re-establishment of a Sikh homeland in response to a demand by governments and the United Nations for a global structure to negotiate on behalf of a sovereign Sikh state, Khalistan. This, again, is important. It's the UN and global governments who have said, look, if you want to talk to us about Khalistan, you need to do it on a united front. You need a proper international structure that can come and talk to us and present this case on a more formal basis. So this is a direct response, and it's designed so that the international diaspora can then get together and present it in a more unified front and a more legally acknowledged and acceptable front. So again, very important progress on the Khalistan issue here. And it finally says the Indian government should be taking extremely serious note of this development of capacity building at the national and international level made public at the convention. They will now be fully aware that two superpowers and their allies are showing a major interest in the re-establishment of a Sikh homeland. In other words, this is a warning shot across the bows of the Indian government. We're getting our act together, the Khalistan movement. We are now talking to two superpowers and their governments who are taking this very seriously. James, big progress, I would say.
That is massive, Angus, and a coordinated effort to be able to approach international politicians and delegates and organizations is really, when you have the power of numbers, makes a huge influence, but it also saves on repetition. So you can have one solidified and organized approach instead of three different international organizations doing it.
Absolutely. So, James, you can obviously keep an eye out on progress on the Canadian Sikh Federation, and they're setting up their infrastructure to reflect here in the UK. So, great. This is great progress. Do keep an eye out for my discussion with Debinderjit on Thursday. We're planning it for, well, we'll dig into that in more detail. We'll give a lot more detail about what's going on there and how things will be taken forward. Okay, my second story. This is a bit of a shocking story, actually, and a bit of a strange one, actually, as well, because in Canada, in Brampton, James, there was a story just released in the last few days that a statue of Maharajah Ranjit Singh was vandalised. And Maharajah Ranjit Singh, of course, was the founder and the very first Maharaja of the Sikh Empire. He ruled from 1801 until he died in 1839. So a very, very important figure, carries a huge significant weight in terms of cultural background and context of the Sikh faith and, of course, the Sikh community and their roots back in the Sikh Empire. But this incident carried out in Brampton, unsurprisingly, has ignited outrage locally among Sikh leaders and, of course, the broader community. And they've demanded action. Now, the weird thing is that this the perpetrator of this incident, a protester, it was led by Hussam Hamdan, identified as a Palestinian protester. Now, I'm a little bit baffled. This isn't, I mean, of course, the usual suspects would have been, of course, India, Hindu activists, RSS, etc. But it turns out, for some reason, it's a Palestinian protester. I'm a little bit baffled why a Palestinian would have any hostility towards, particularly Sikhs and, of course, Ranjit Singh. Perhaps those in our audience can perhaps shed some light, particularly locally, if you know why on earth a Palestinian protester would have any argument. But anyway, Harmeet Singh Kalka, he's the president of the Delhi Sikh Gurdwara Management Committee, expressed his strong condemnation of the incident, and he said that the Maharajah is a monumental figure symbolising Sikh pride, valour and unity. He should of course be honoured and respected, not subjected to such disgraceful vandalism. It's an act of intolerance, it's a direct assault on the principles of a peaceful coexistence and diversity, which are the bedrock of any civilised society. And interestingly, Manjinder Singh Sirsa, he's the National Secretary of the BJP. He also spoke out against it. And full credit to him for saying this. He called it a disgraceful act. Maharajah Ranjit Singh is a towering symbol of Sikh pride, bravery and unity. He deserves respect, not vandalism. Such acts of intolerance are a direct attack on peaceful coexistence and have no place in civil society. So well done him for posting that up on X, it turned out. And so yeah, I think, James, first of all, it's a completely mindless act. I mean, targeting statues as vandalism. I mean, it's happened here in the UK in recent riots, particularly the far left vandalise all sorts of statues. It's a pretty mindless act, but it's also a very significant act. And it is rightly condemned across the whole political spectrum. But this particular story, it's very particularly offensive to the Sikh community. Rightly so, the Sikh community are outraged by this. They have stood up and said and demanded action. But I'm a little bit baffled, James. Any idea why you think a political protester from Palestine might have any argument against Maharajah Ranjit Singh?
Well, here in Canada, Brampton is actually home to the largest diaspora of Sikhs, and I think that some people are frustrated not directly with the Sikhs, but with religious leaders internationally of all faiths when it comes to their perceived lack of public denunciation of the violence going on in the Middle East. And the second part of it, Angus, is that I think that some of these protesters have more fingers than they have brain cells at times. They don't take into account the damage they're doing both physically and emotionally to a community. They just, are in it to film it, get clicks on social media or to get their word out, but they aren't clear as to what they're actually doing or what their goal is and what the message is that they want to convey. They're just frustrated and acting out. And as I said, some of them are just doing it for attention. They have more fingers than brain cells. That's all I can say on that one, Angus. I just don't know why else they would target the Sikh community being of Palestinian origin.
Yeah, a bit of a strange one. Maybe we can get the perspectives of our Brampton residents in the audience. If you've got any ideas on why, other than just a bit of mindless, random violence, then do let us know your thoughts on that one. Okay, my third and final story today. This is again. We talk about Indian so-called democracy. Well, here's another situation that's happened in the last sort of 48 hours or so. And again, it highlights what is going on locally in India and the suppression of self-determination, however it manifests itself in India. And this came over the newswires just overnight. An Indian environmental activist was detained in New Delhi at the end of a month-long climate protest march on foot from the Himalayas. Now, this gentleman, Sonam Wangchuk, and around 100 of his supporters were taken into custody on Monday night when they were intercepted by police on a major highway leading into Delhi. The group had just walked nearly 1,000 kilometres to demand more attention to climate change issues in their mountainous home region of Ladakh. But of course, and as part of that, they were also campaigning for more political autonomy for the territory. Basically, they were also fighting for self-determination of Ladakh. Now, they had planned to hold a peaceful rally today, coinciding with the birthday of Mahatma Gandhi, but they were prevented from entering the capital. And one of their spokesmen said, "We have been detained at the police station and we are not being allowed to even meet our lawyers." I mean, I raise my eyebrows again. Ladakh, of course, sits up in that highly militarised frontier area between India, Pakistan and China. We have had various reports looking at Ladakh, a beautiful part of the world and, of course, formerly part of the Sikh Empire. And both India, Pakistan and, of course, China all do have claims on parts of that remote territory up in the far north. The region is, of course, at the forefront of climate change. That's part of the reason why he was campaigning for climate change. And it has seen melting glaciers and an increased incidence of flooding and landslides. They have suffered hugely from natural disasters as a result of that. And it is currently governed directly by the BJP government from Delhi. So they have absolutely no self-autonomy or no self-decision-making capabilities in the region at all, which is why this pro-independence movement hasn't been as, I would say, as vocal as the J&K and the Punjabi Khalistan movements, but it is very much there. And of course, it is another area that we do keep an eye on as another one of those dominoes that could potentially fall once Khalistan happens. Now, Wangchuk himself, this guy who's been detained, has spearheaded this campaign demanding Ladakh be given statehood, a move that he says would help the territory preserve its fragile ecosystem by giving locals more control over environmental policies. And of course, Rahul Gandhi has waded into this argument as well in the last day or so. He's come out and said publicly, and he's publicly condemned the detentions as what he calls an unacceptable breach of the protesters' rights. Why are elderly citizens being detained at Delhi's border for standing up for Ladakh's future? And activists, news organisations and non-profit groups say they have faced increased harassment and legal threats since Modi took office in 2014. So, again, no surprise. This is a campaigner for Ladakh independence. Again, not as vocal or as active, I would say, as the pro-Khalistan movement, but certainly in his own quiet way and his small number of supporters. He's been just quietly campaigning for Ladakh's independence, and he's suddenly found himself. He's walked all the way from Ladakh to highlight his cause. He's been caught on the outskirts of Delhi by Delhi police, and he's put in prison. He's not even being given access to his lawyers. What on earth does that say, firstly, about the state of democracy in India, secondly, about the state of the rule of law in India? Again, I'm not going to rant on this one, James. I think the whole story speaks for itself, does it not?
Oh, it absolutely does. And of course, it's just a regular day for the India government and the police to arrest people and arbitrarily detain them for no just cause. And, of course, if they were to achieve their autonomy and their independence, then, of course, as you said, the dominoes will fall. You're looking at Khalistan, you're looking at J&K, you're looking, at all these different regions that really India could go the way of the old USSR in terms of breaking up and becoming a whole group of independent nations there.
And I think absolutely right. And I think just the very fact that Narendra Modi's government won't even engage with this guy. Instead, they just lock him up, deny access to normal process of law. All he's doing by doing that is actually promoting the pro-Khalistan movement. This is the wonderful law of unintended consequences once again, is that the independence movement is spreading across India. The Tamils are talking about it everywhere across India now. All these regions are talking about it because this suppression is actually having this effect of highlighting to all these regions that if you even talk about this, we'll lock you up and you won't even get access to any process of normal law. So, of course, they're saying, well, we don't want to be part of that. That's not what we stand for in our regions. We stand for the rule of law. We stand for democracy as we believe it should be run, as it is indeed rolled out in the West. So, yeah, wonderfully promoting these things. And as we keep saying, James, the dominoes will start to fall, I've no doubt. So, on that note, let's move on to... Absolutely. Sorry, James, yeah. So let's move on to...
I just said absolutely.
Yeah, right. Sorry, James. It's of course, the delay. To our audience, if you wonder why we get these weird moments, it's because, of course, there is a delay. The speed of light delay, supposedly, between Canada and the UK. So, my first sort of laugh of the comments section is going to come in this first section. I'm going to call this the Dave Singh page. Now, Dave Singh has been a great contributor to our comments columns, and particularly our podcast. He's been a very vocal critic. He's been outpouring pouring in vast volumes, all sorts of interesting comments and all sorts of insults, and absolutely he's attacked our interviewees, he's attacked our shows from every angle, and it has brought a lot of mirth and hilarity from our side, some of these comments. But I wanted just to highlight these are just a few I could actually even show in public. And I would actually add to this, and this is a message to all our critics: we do not delete any of these comments. If you're a critic of the show, and as long as you don't come out with a long stream of profanities, we will always publish your comments. This is how freedom of speech works. We are completely amenable to being criticised. We are completely amenable and open to insults and things. This is how we work. And we are quite happy to publish, even though YouTube filters out all these comments, I always approve all these comments for publication. For two reasons. One, because we totally agree with freedom of speech. I respect your right to put up all sorts of insulting comments and criticisms. Secondly, and I want to thank Dave Singh for this, because you are improving our algorithm. Every time you write a rude comment, you are contributing to the Perspectives algorithm, to our show. You are ensuring that you are increasing our reach, that our show is actually shown to more people. So thank you to Dave Singh for your hundreds of rude comments, because actually you have done us Perspectives a favour, you've done the Sikh community a massive favour, because our message on behalf of the Sikh community is now reaching a wider audience. So thank you, Dave Singh, for your comments. Do keep them coming. And do we go through these and say, I don't think I'm even going to give Dave Singh the light of day on these. There were a few things maybe that we could argue, but it's more of the same old comments here, James.
I see that again and again and again.
And I will pick up one comment, and again, it's a tired old comment that we see so often from the right wing, particularly from the Hindutva, saying that Sikhs are Hindus. Sikhs are not Hindus on any way, shape or form, on any level. I myself, to prove the point even to myself, have read a book, a very in-depth academic book that is actually very old. It was written by a Sikh academic who actually picked apart over hundreds of pages all the details, proving through the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, all the pages comparing to Hindu scriptures, why Sikhs are fundamentally different to Hindus on every level, all the way back, yes, to the first Guru. So unfortunately, this argument that Sikhs are Hindus does not stand up to any scrutiny on any level. If you don't believe me, read this book, and the title doesn't come to mind, but there is a book out there where it picks apart and explains to those hard of thinking why Sikhs are not Hindus. I will leave it at that, James. Right.
Absolutely. Angus, we could go on for days on that subject.
Indeed. But again, thank you, Dave Singh, for all your many, many comments. Right. Now, I just mentioned Tamils. Let me check makes an interesting comment here. Tamils are 1,000 times more honourable and worthy to their culture and tradition and language, because they won't let the RSS touch their land or cultural language. But on the other hand, Punjabis are becoming more and more slaves to RSS propaganda. Well, this is quite an interesting comment, because I think, sadly, the RSS is so powerful in the Punjab that they are having an effect. They are influencing. We've seen what we've referred to colloquially as fake Sikhs. There are many in the Sikh community who have been influenced and persuaded and seduced by this RSS propaganda. It's deeply troubling, it's deeply worrying, and it's deeply distressing and sad that it is having this effect. And let me check, does actually highlight the Tamils down in the south of India, who have been obviously themselves a very proud race, a very proud people with a hugely historic culture. And they have themselves resisted this move of the RSS. And again, talking about dominoes to fall, again, a very powerful domino that could potentially fall in the south of India. So thank you for letting me check on that one. Now, talking about the RSS, Rajveer Dhillon says all major countries should stop issuing all types of visas to Hindus. World Hindu Council and other RSS sister organisations are extremely strong and meddling in the West. Yes, they are. Well, James, I think it's probably a little bit too discriminatory for us to close visas and to not allow visas to all Hindus. I think we ourselves would be held up to sort of totalitarian accusations.
Absolutely, Angus, and not to mention that you can't paint everyone with one brush. And, there are so many Hindus out there that are amazing people that contribute to societies, that contribute to the GDP, the growth, the community social structures. I mean, there's just so many benefits of having all different people coming into the countries, whether it's on visas or through immigration processes. So, of course, yes, should there be tighter restrictions? Absolutely. Should there be tighter background checks? Absolutely. Should there be more accountability for people that enter countries as guests or otherwise? Yes, absolutely. Should we block the door to all people because of a small group? Absolutely not.
Yep, couldn't say it any better myself, Jones. S. Baines also says, looking forward to the release of the information in the report by CSIS. Foreign interference is finally getting the attention it deserves in Canada. It certainly is, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is. And even today, as I said, outside the courthouse, it was a hot button topic for everybody there. So.
Yeah, it's great. So we'll of course keep an eye on that second phase of the investigation. 1S1 N2, Gurdas Man. We had a whole story about Gurdas Man. He has spent his life in trying to destroy the fabric of the Punjab. Yeah, he's this propaganda mouthpiece of the RSS, and all we can say is just boycott everything that he produces, as of course the community has been to Kangana Ranort. It does have an impact. Gurdas Man struggling to sell his tickets across the US because of the high-profile campaigning against his stance. Farmers 498 says,
that's right. Sikhs
need to ask for reparations from the British and India and Pakistan combined. Should not let these countries take the gold from British vaults, as that gold belongs to Sikhs. Well, this is quite a powerful point. Should there be reparations from the British, and certainly should they demand gold from the British vaults? I don't know. I'm a little bit on the fence about this. I think, from my perspective, James, I call it the compensation. My reparations from the British should be actually to campaign actively to hand Khalistan, hand the Punjab back to the Sikh community. Should we start handing gold? I think that'll come into a negotiation when Khalistan is established. Should the British start financing in terms of gold? It will need a central bank, of course, Khalistan, and of course it will need gold as some sort of collateral to stand behind a currency, the Khalistan currency. That's a whole other topic. Reparations, from my perspective, James, I think the reparations should be that we in the West, and certainly the British government, the British state, should campaign actively and work towards giving Khalistan, the Punjab, back to the Sikh community.
I agree, Angus, but if it makes them feel any better, I'm not opposed to them putting, Harry and Meghan in the vault. They can keep them.
Don't get me started on that one. I think we'll swiftly move on to Avtar Singh's comment. Good keeping, telling the truth, absolutely. When is the British government going to tell the Indian government to release Jaggi? Well, watch my podcast with Gurpreet, his brother, which will be uploaded hopefully today for the discussion on that. Very good question. Don't forget the genocide, the governments that stood with the genocidal government, the covering up. Oh, yes, absolutely. We talked about the collusion. Indeed, the true figures are higher of the Sikh killings. Absolutely. There's a lot of points in here, which I think there's nothing in here I can disagree with. Even certain countries sold satellite footage of the genocide to the Indian government so it couldn't be used in court. There's too much. We're running out of time. There's too much even to pick apart there. Thank you, Avtar Singh, there. Thank you for that comment. There's lots of important points there. Final set of comments. Gurpreet. Oh yes, James, we talked about, we asked the question to our audience. If you, wherever you are in the diaspora, as and when Khalistan is established, would you move back? Well, Gurpreet has said, yes, I will move back. I don't know where you are, Gurpreet. Let us know where you are. But interesting that you would up sticks, as they say, and move back to Khalistan. Nirmal Singh, who's commented before, you're in Malaysia. but I will go back and live there. Khalistan Zimdabad. Oh yes, love Australia. Of course, you moved around and ended up in Australia. So another one, James, who would move back to Khalistan. Nirmal would move back as well. Let us know if you're out there in diaspora, you would move back to Khalistan. I think it's very encouraging, is it not, James?
Absolutely, and we'd be there to visit too. So we'll help you unpack.
Looking forward to it. I bought my sun hat ready and my sunglasses. So. 1S1N2 says it's not just Sikhs. This is interesting. It's not just Sikhs, but Hindus that are pro-Khalistan across the world, and not just in the Punjab. Well, of course, we do know there's a very large pro-Khalistan movement globally, but interesting that you reckon the Hindus. Not surprising, I would say, because, of course, we all know what Khalistan stands for and what it will stand for. It is this equality, this very welcoming, equitable state, and it will welcome people from all faiths, all religions, all backgrounds, etc. So it's not surprising that Hindus would be tempted to move there. I have no doubt that across India, once Khalistan is established, I think if India gets its Hindu Rashtra and it then moves back into, let's say, the central belt, the cow belt, and of course the other parts of India get their independence, and Khalistan is particularly established, I suspect there will be many Indians who are a bit sick of the Brahmins' rule. I think they will recognise Khalistan for what it is and the benefits that it offers just ordinary citizens of Khalistan. I think you're absolutely right, 1S1N2. I think people will, of all faiths, move to Khalistan. So, interesting comment. Surface of the OESJ says, this is a good one. Welcome. How come I didn't know about this channel until today? Well, I don't know. Tell more people about us. Great content, according to the changing geopolitics and India's rise as a third great superpower to China, you say. So welcome to the channel. So glad you have finally found us. As we say to all our audience, spread the good word. It's very hard getting us out there, particularly as the Indian government are doing their absolute utmost to close us down. They are blocking us wherever they can find us. They are trying to restrict our reach. So it is up to you guys out there in the audience. Get the word out. Tell your friends. Tell everybody in the community about our things. Link our videos. If you're on social media, link to our videos on social media. So again, it's all about, if you know 10 people, spread the word to those 10 people and get those 10 people to spread the word. And quickly, our reach it spreads out widely, James. It's all about spreading our reach out there.
I think there's laws about that, Angus, but we won't go there.
Indeed. And finally, to wrap things up, from B33263, thanks to both of you. Well, thank you for your comment. Khalistan is coming 100%. It was predicted by our 10th guru. We appreciate you both being positive about Khalistan. Well, why wouldn't you? May Akal Purak keep you in Chardi Kala. Well, a wonderful blessing, James. I think it is a privilege and honour for both of us to stand up for Khalistan, is it not?
Absolutely. And we are just amazed every day at the amazingly positive and welcoming comments that we get. So thank you to all the viewers out there, even the ones that challenge us and, despise us. We still appreciate you taking the time to comment.
And I think the important thing, the point to raise is, and again, there have been criticisms, why are we involved in it? Why are James and I involved in it? Because we're making history. We are at a point in history, it's very rare, excuse me, it's very rare in history when a new country is established. It's very rare something like this happens. And it's all about legacy, a legacy of the community, the Sikh community and anybody involved in this campaign. When Khalistan happens, we make a huge mark on the world. We look back to the Sikh Empire all these years later. What a beacon in history that stood in terms of democracy. Imagine now the impact of Khalistan on the global stage and what it will stand for. If we can play any small part in bringing Khalistan to happen, when Khalistan happens, it is going to hit not just global headlines, it is going to be a mark in history. It is going to lay down a marker in history that the Sikh Empire, the new Sikh Empire, was established. To be a part of that is an absolute privilege and an honour. So we will continue to work towards that goal. But in the meantime, on that wonderful note, we must, of course, wrap things up with perspectives. Don't forget to keep those comments coming in. We do appreciate them. Don't forget, you can, of course, message us directly at message@satellitetv.com on anything you'd like to bring to our attention. But in the meantime, we must wrap things up. Thank you so much for watching Perspectives. It is a goodbye from me, and it is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone. Thanks for watching.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.